Hey everyone, this is Tom Savantry, wealth strategist at Premier Trust Advisors. Thanks for joining me today on this quick webinar. Now, as you look at the screen here, gain financial freedom. I think everyone would agree they'd love to have financial freedom. And most people are moving towards and thinking about retirement. The day they can actually stop working and kick their feet up and be in a setting like you see here, sitting on a beach here with no stress, having peace of mind that you've done the hard work to reach retirement and you have financial freedom. Now, the unfortunate reality is that the true picture of retirement looks very different for a lot of people in this country. When we think about it, that over three quarters of baby boomers aren't even confident enough that they're going to be able to retire. And there are different philosophies around retirement, but that is something that most people are shooting for, some level of retirement they can stop working. And it's crazy to think that 1 in 3 Americans have nothing saved for retirement. So they're living paycheck to paycheck, just trying to scrape by, and they're not able to save for their futures. And currently at age 65, for folks who are there, that if they have saved something, it's roughly $100,000, which is not a lot of money to be living off of to turn your work into your assets into income. That is not a significant amount of savings that is going to last. And as we're living longer, that's even going to be a bigger problem. And to that point where people are thinking that Social Security is really going to help out, well, by 2033, the assumption is that Social Security is going to need to be cut because of the budgetary issues associated with the program. So in that sense, it's really not something that people can rely on for sure in the future without drastic changes in maybe tax rates or other things around the program. So when we think about our gaining financial freedom and having financial success, obviously there's the concept of going up the mountain. And this is, what's the objective of your financial goal is obviously to maximize the amount of wealth that you can build over time. Now, that's just one piece of the story, because obviously going up the mountain is good, but that also means that you need to come back down from the mountain safely. And that's really the other part of it. So you have the accumulation aspect on going up the mountain, but unfortunately you need to come down safely too, because that is where you're going to benefit from all the hard work you've done to accumulate the wealth, but then create income from that so that it can sustain the rest of your life. And, there's an interesting story that the vast majority of people who die on Mount Everest are on the down, coming from down from the mountain, because they've spent so much energy going up that they don't have the resources or ability to get down safely. And that's really going to be the important aspect as it relates to retirement. And so when you think about a financial journey, as I mentioned, the accumulate is obviously big. And one of the big things is to reach your maximum financial potential, MFP. So that requires reducing the amount of waste within what you're spending and saving and paying yourself first by by saving money before you spend it. Now, the second piece is the distribution. Obviously, you're creating assets that are going to create the maximum amount of income over your lifetime, and having the peace of mind that you actually won't outlive it. And that's going to be hugely important as we think about moving forward in retirement. And then for those who are looking for legacy, how do you preserve those assets as well so that they can be passed on very efficiently to beneficiaries or charities that are important to you that you're trying to leave a legacy to? And we need to position our assets in a way that we could pass them on with the least amount of costs and taxes. And the reality is a lot of the financial focus is really focused on accumulating into buckets of money, and less concern about creating income now and how we're going to do that efficiently in the future. But we have to recognize that our dollar is three-dimensional. We have to think of them holistically across the way, because we can't just think about accumulation and then figure out how to distribute it efficiently. So we have to be very thoughtful up front to coordinate our assets in a way that helps ensure that we have the ability to get that maximum income and have the peace of mind will last. And so this really illustrates the concept. And for most people who have a job and they're thinking they're working in their lives and creating income, saving money, hopefully, that at some point in time, they're going to have to switch gears and push to have their money and their assets actually working for them instead of the individual working. And this puts some significant pressures on people, especially in retirement. Maybe they haven't even learned how to create income. So now the question is, how do you do so efficiently so you can use the most amount of your money and ensure that it doesn't run out and be able to leave a legacy if desired? Now, when we think about how people are managing their financial decisions now, there's a real challenge here because most people especially those trying to go at this alone, and even for some who aren't, that a lot of decisions are being made one at a time, and with different types of people, different types of advisors, and different areas, and then oftentimes under different circumstances of stress or different stages in life. And so what ends up happening is that there's the accumulation of a junk drawer, and this is a picture that we, unfortunately, I think most of us probably have one, that our financial lives are in pieces, and it lacks the coordination and insight to be able to manage it holistically. So it's kind of a ragtag piece of tools financially. And what is also sort of being taught in terms of a typical approach is that all we need to do is invest in the stock market, right? That's the only place that investments are. That's the epitome of investing for the future is in the stock markets and maybe even bond markets. And that, now we've grown to this concept of having to rely on retirement accounts or government plans. We have to stuff as much money in here and just hide it away till we get to use it someday. And, things like prepaying your mortgage because debt is a bad thing. And so having people put so much more money into our homes and locking that away, and that we have to rely on banks that are there for us that basically can't even keep up with inflation in terms of the money in there. And we're working towards a retirement age that we stop providing value to this world, that's what we're gunning for. And we're deferring, we're not even saving tax, we're deferring them to a later date that supposedly we're supposed to be in a lower tax bracket for some reason, and then subject to all the rules around those types of accounts and when we can and cannot use them. And then we're really being taught that we can't control our own financial destiny, so we've got to hand that off to somebody else to manage, who are collecting fees and eroding our wealth over time. And this is in a nutshell what we've been taught, and it's leading it to a point where people are out of control with their money, and it's a hope. You're crossing your fingers that this is going to play out because there's so many variables that could change, that could derail this. Now, when we think about financial institutions, and they play by a set of rules that certainly work in their favor, and not saying that they're bad people, but they have a good strategy in place. And one strategy, the 4 rules that they play by starts with, they need your money. They want it. They want your money so they can manage it, collect fees from it, and utilize it for other investments. And they want to have it systematically delivered to them, just like monthly cash flow or bi-weekly cash flow, so it continues for a long basis. And they want to hold on to it for a long amount of time because if they're collecting fees and using that money, they don't want to have it for very short periods of time. And then when you want it back, they want to trickle that back to you very slowly because they, again, want to hold on to that for as long as possible. So they don't want you to have it, only a lot of it. They want you to have as little as possible. And when you think about where we've been traditionally taught to invest, it's in the stock market, right? And everyone says the markets return 12%. You hear Dave Ramsey say this thing all the time, that why invest anywhere else? Just throw it into your mutual funds, index funds. They're going to do 12%, and that's a pre-tax before fees and such too. But when you look at the reality of it, most people are not earning that. And there's an adage that the actively managed funds are actually barely ever beating the market. And so even in our 30-year range, the S&P is earning, say, 10% over a long stretches of time. But for most people, they're not earning nearly that much, less than 4%. And a lot of it is emotional changes in how they're managing their assets. So there's some discipline that maybe is warranted by having advisors that help them sort of stay the course. But the reality is most people are not earning that. And they're also paying fees and losing money that way. And then this doesn't even count for the taxes. So the reality is most people are not even getting close to what the market is doing. And now when you think about this, where most people are putting their assets, like mutual funds and stocks, are in certain accounts. Now, imagine for a second if I offered you this option that you had a partnership, and in that partnership, you own, say, 70%, and they own 30%. However, even though they own 30% of it, they're going to dictate to you when you can actually access your money and then how much they get to keep. Now, think about that for a second. If you had a partner that had a minority ownership of your assets, your business, but they got to control this part of it, is that a partnership you'd want to get into? Probably not. But this is what everyone is doing in 401ks, IRAs, SEPs, right? 403bs, all you name them, all these types of plans are called qualified plans. And who actually is controlling this? Well, this is a government type of account. This is in the tax code. And so most people are putting their money into retirement accounts where actually a lot of the control is out of their hands, because there's market risk, there's tax rate risk, right? And even interest rate risk that are buried into these accounts that are going to make it completely out of your control in terms of what's going to be there when you need it. And the rules are subject to change. So this is what we've been taught that we're supposed to be doing, but it's really a partnership that's one-sided. Now, one of the things that a lot of folks have run across in terms of accessing money, right? When you talk about the 401k plan, say you have it, and one of the theories is that how you create income from it. And that's really the biggest thing. There's no point in having a massive account if you can't actually use it. Well, this is the beauty of how they keep money in their hands for a lot longer. Well, running a bunch of scenarios, it was determined that for people's retirement accounts, and take a 401k where a lot of money is going to be sitting, that the safe withdrawal rate is 3%, less than 3% a year, to ensure that over a course of 30 years, the likelihood of running out is going to be small. And so if you go down the line, 4%, obviously there's a higher chance of failure, right? An 80-90% success rate. So there's a 10% chance it could fail. And this is due to the fact that there's a sequence of risks that occurs with the market, that it doesn't go earn 10% every year. It can go up 25%, down 5, down 10, up 30. So the fluctuations of that cause some risk. And especially when you're early in retirement, that could be a very dangerous situation that could completely change the trajectory of your retirement. And so this is how, so imagine if you had $1 million account, you could only take out maybe $30,000, maybe max $40,000 to ensure that you don't run out of money over your retirement. That to me does not sound like a very efficient use of that asset, that you're keeping it within that small range of being able to use it. What if you could actually use that money and actually use some of the principal as well, so you get to enjoy the money you saved up? Well, the typical withdrawal rates don't allow you to do that. So let's talk a little bit about just in terms of what's going to maybe make it difficult to even accumulate the wealth that you're seeking. And some people don't even have a number, but say you did have a number, what would stop you from getting there? Well, a number of things what we consider wealth eroding factors come into play. It's not a lot of the focus on rates of return and having your investments grow, but really there's a lot of things that are going to make it difficult to build your wealth. One big one is taxes, and we'll go into this a little bit more. Taxes comprise a massive loss for people of their wealth every year. And so how do we minimize that so we can keep more is so important. And then we have things like inflation. Inflation is a stealth sort of tax in that it erodes your wealth if you don't keep up with it. And putting your money into a bank account earning not 1% is actually losing value every single year due to inflation. And so inflation over time, even at a 3% inflation rate over 30 years will make your dollar feel like 40 cents. So those are real impacts that are hurting our wealth. And so we have to recognize these things and figure out how do we minimize them or ensure that we can, combat them along the way. Another big one is lost opportunity costs. That is an economic term that sort of goes into based on the choices you make financially, what is that opportunity you're giving up by using your money in a certain way or putting in certain accounts? So that opportunity cost can be sizable. And these actually go hand in hand because the more money you pay in taxes, the more you cannot use that money. So then you can't use that money for the rest of your life. So these are types of things, or even paying in cash for things, and we'll go into a little bit of that. So these are wealth eroding factors. We've got to figure out how to minimize or remove out of our lives to really build our maximum wealth. And where do some of these cases where people are losing money? They could be how you buy your home, the type of ways you manage credit, how you use banks, again, taxes, how you fund your cars. I mean, there's so many ways that people are losing money and wealth over time that based on how they're using money, sometimes it's not even where you put your money, it's how you use it. And it's important to understand the different ramifications of all those options. So where do people's money go? Where does your money go? So if we take it from the one area, financial institutions, and here you got the IRS, you got lifestyle, and hopefully you're saving a bit, right? And say it's 30% going to banks through financing, and it's 40% in taxes, and maybe it's 20% in lifestyle. Maybe you're lucky enough to save 10%, right? So if we think about it from that perspective, say you had 10% saving, and say you had $100,000 in income. Well, 10%, if you were to save that, it's $10,000, right? So again, now imagine you go through that same 10% earnings, right? You would earn $1,000 that year. Not bad. Now let's think about it and that comes with risk, right? Because there's no guarantee of that 10% earnings rate, and if you're in the stock market or whatever you want to invest in. What if we looked at the other big chunks of not lifestyle, but what we're paying to banks, financial institutions, what we're paying to the government in terms of taxes? What if that amount of 70%, which is $70,000, what if you were able to reduce that by, 3%? That would be $2,100. Now that, in comparison, is actually twice the return in terms of volume of dollars that comes back into your world. And you didn't even need to take on any risk from doing it. So that's on the very conservative. What if you can do 10% of that? And that will go into perpetuity. So this is what there's a recognition that yes, there's focus on rates of return, but there's likely more to be gained by minimizing the losses of where your money is going, the rest of your money, and bringing that back into your role, giving you more wealth with less risk. So given what everyone, what most people are taught financially, where does that leave most people today? Well, one, less control, like we talked about. It's going to markets, going to financial institutions, banks, the government. And we have less flexibility because a lot of our money's tied up, right? It's tied up in accounts. It's tied up in qualified plans we can't access till we're 59 and a half. And so we don't have as much liquidity as we would like. And a lot of it's focused on accumulation, right? The reality is we're accumulating so that we can create income. And so why can't we start figuring out how to learn how to create income now while we're here? Maybe that reduces the amount of income we need to create through our jobs. And it really focused on taking a lot of risks to earn the rates of return that people hope for, and sometimes at a loss of protections, right? And we'll go into a little bit more of that, but that's the protections are going to protecting your wealth becomes even more important than just growing that, because if you're unprotected, that can sort of stop your ability to earn in the future through death, disability, all these things that are going to cause you, or lawsuits that are going to steal your wealth in the future. And we talked about opportunity costs, where we're paying these things. Now we can't deploy that money for other purposes. And a lot of it is very efficient because our money's doing one job, right? It's sitting in accounts that hope to grow. What if you could actually have your money working in multiple spots and sort of coordinating and providing you benefits more than just building wealth in accounts, but using protect you, create liquidity, help your investments actually function at a higher level. Now, how would you do that? Well, one way is to make sure you understand what you have. When you know what's going on, what is happening, and understand the situation, you're going to be in a much better position to understand what to do. And so what I've come across, which has been hugely helpful to a lot of my clients, is actually seeing their financial lives on a game board. And what I've used is a LEAP model, and it stands for Lifetime Acceleration Process, Economic Acceleration Process. And it helps you look at a bunch of different areas that help coordinate all your financial pieces so that you can determine how to create additional efficiencies across all the different areas. And we'll go through it in a second. So one is protection. And we're talking about protections for assets and income, and assets, income, and life. So at a foundational core, you need to better position and have the max amount of protection at the least amount of cost, right? Because if we're not protecting our assets, like our homes and our livelihood through umbrella insurance, things that are going to be catastrophic issues for us, we need to protect those so that regardless of what happens, we'll have that asset continue to be there for us and get it replaced or a loss. Obviously, things like health, disability, those are going to be key areas that if you can't work anymore, where's the income going to come from? So how to protect you, who are the biggest assets you have? You're your biggest asset, ability to produce income. And then lastly, things around like wills and trusts and life. Like our life ourselves, we are, like I mentioned, our biggest asset. So how do we not protect that to its ultimate? Would you ever not protect your home? Do you want to protect half your home? Well, same thing that goes for your life. Your life has a value to it based on how much you can produce in this world. So protecting all of these areas of your life will help you build wealth and protect it from financial failure. Now, the second piece is savings. And this is, savings can be a very boring topic, but savings is important because it really hits on liquidity. Right? Where can you have money that's growing that hopefully will beat inflation, but is accessible and safe and never can go down in value. Now, obviously, a lot of what saving has or migrated to is really synonymous with investing. When people say save in a qualified plan or 401k for your retirement, well, it's not saving because there's a chance that stuff's going to be lost. You don't know what the tax rate would be, so it's not safe, right? It has risk to it. And unfortunately, we've been taught that that's where you save. Well, you also need to have money that's liquid, accessible, and can't be lost. And so that's what we help teach a lot of clients, like how do you do that efficiently without incurring a lot of opportunity costs? Third piece is growth. Obviously, we need to grow our money. So if you have the protections in place, maximum protection, least amount of cost, you have savings, at least saving about 15-20% of your income and having about at least 3 to 6 months of income saved and accessible at minimum. And then you got to grow your wealth, right? And there's a lot of ways from income levels, a little riskier with growth. And then thinking about it from a tax perspective, what are things that are very tax efficient? And so having the ability to have enough money to deploy in here so that you can outpace inflation and grow your wealth along the way, create income where it makes sense. But this is where this all gets coordinated together to make sure that where your money's going in, it's providing you an ideal state. And then the last two bits are sort of a hover over all of them. And one is cash flow. I mean, cash flow is what I think is the most relevant thing because obviously you need cash to live. Building money into accounts to accumulate, to create cash flow is important, but you got to learn how to do that efficiently. And cash flow why not generate that all through your lifetime from your assets as opposed to just during retirement? And then debt window is just really focused on how do we make sure you don't have any bad debt so then we can transfer that to good debt or no debt depending on the circumstances. And so debt and leverage can be very valuable tools if used wisely. But when there's bad debt in terms of consuming a lot of cash flow, we have to figure out how can we address that efficiently. And the reality is that when a lot of people that I do meet and see, their worlds are actually upside down. When we think about foundational pieces of protection and protecting our assets and us as individuals, we're our biggest asset. Most people are focused on the growth and investing stage. That's what they tell you to do. Take on more risk, right? You got to outpace inflation. You got to grow your wealth. And so, but they're leaving themselves with less liquidity and lower amounts of protection for the things that are going to stop them from getting the growth that they want, right? If you are unable to work, is the government or your company going to pay for you and save for you for your retirement? Of course not. So these are types of things that, we have to sort of explore to see how we can ensure that regardless of what happens in the future, your foundation's so strong, you're still going to have a lot of ways to still get to your financial success that you desire. And a lot of it touches on that earlier concept of, having that junk drawer, like having someone helping you look at and coordinate the various aspects of your financial life, and even other advisors that you may run into, your tax advisor, your auto and home agent, your life agent, legal advisor. These are all folks that play a certain role, but who's helping you quarterback your financial life and act as your CFO to help you ensure that your business at home is running as smoothly, as efficiently as you might be experiencing in your business or your job. And so it's taking that same lens, that treating your own personal financial life as a business. How do I make sure I don't have waste? How do I make sure that I can have my dollars providing the most beneficial investments and returns for me and my family or business? And so you need someone to help you sort of macro manage your financial life. So the LEAP model and other advisors who follow this really can help people navigate that. Take a look at their financial lives on the whole game board and learn unique strategies that are much more effective in terms of protection, building liquidity, and growing wealth. And a lot of it is to protect your wealth. I mean, that's a really underappreciated area, that if you had a lawsuit and you're not protecting your wealth, that future wealth is going to be eroded and gone before you know it. And the efficiency standpoint of that, having your your dollars doing way more than one job is very efficient instead of just putting them in separate accounts. And it'll help position and coordinate assets in a way that the account values are important, but really what's most important, how do I generate the most income so you get to enjoy that? Without that in place, then it's going to keep you out of your money for while you're alive and may not be able to pass that on efficiently. And that's what the last piece talks about, maximizing based on what it is you want and maximizing your legacy. What do you want to pass on to your future generations? It may not even be your kids, maybe your grandkids, or maybe a charity that you care a lot about. Like, how do you maximize that while not sacrificing the enjoyment of your money while you're on this earth? So I hope this webinar was useful for you to get a better lens at the challenges a lot of people have with their personal finances. And it isn't just about accumulation and reaching to that peak of the mountain, but it's also preparing yourselves and having your assets coordinated in a way so that when you come down off of this mountain, you're going to have the maximum amount of wealth generated in your lifetime, have the maximum amount of income to enjoy while you're retired, and have peace of mind. It will not run out while you're here, but then know that the desires you have to pass on legacy are done in the most efficient manner for you and what matters most to you. So I hope this was helpful, and if you want to explore these things further, I urge you to reach out to me, Tom Savantry, of Premier Trust Advisors, and so we can take a look at what's happening in your financial lives and help you reach the accomplishments you want in your life financially as well as personally.